But I wanted to start because I went to Disney World as a kid. I was fortunate to go, and I thought it was magic, and I had no idea the economic machete
Yeah.
that Disney World was taking to Orlando.
Yeah.
It's pretty much Miami and Orlando, I would say, are some of the worst in terms of the affordable housing crisis
Yep.
here. And Disney World has gotten $2 billion in tax giveaways.
Yep.
And most of the tax giveaways they've gotten have gone to them hiring low-wage workers,
Yep.
seasonal workers, and during COVID, they laid off nearly 60,000 workers.
Yep.
For people that don't know, could you explain, basically, Disney in many ways has bought Florida?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with the type of politicians that we have in power, right? From the local level, the state level, even to the national level. And what we see is corporations like Disney, and Disney's one of the biggest ones, but definitely not the only one, especially here in Central Florida, that takes advantage of these politicians, owns a lot of them, and pushes them to a place where they're getting these $2 billion tax cuts, where they're getting a lot of these big tax incentives to do what they have already been doing, right? A lot of times it's not like they are getting these tax incentives and hiring a bunch of people full-time, good dignified wages, good benefits and everything like that. Our unions have to fight for that after the fact a lot of the times. And so that's pretty much what we see here. And it's not just Disney. We can take a step back and look at it from a bird's eye view, and we see it happening with big sugar here in Florida, with the sugar industry that's completely unchecked, and fossil fuel industry here in Florida. And it's creating a situation where essentially these companies are being rewarded for polluting our environment. And that's why we need a lot of good people who are willing to hold them accountable.
And can you kind of talk about Disney specifically?
Yeah.
I mean, they're one of the most profitable companies on
Yeah.
earth. How is it that they're getting all these tax breaks, but more importantly, how is that contributing to skyrocketing rents
Yeah.
and the scarcity in housing available for people?
Well, a lot of it has to do with the fact that when we give them these tax breaks, that's money not coming into our county government, our city government. And I've been going to a lot of these affordable housing and transit kind of open forums with the county government. And when I go and speak with the folks who are doing the work, like the staff level, their main complaint is we need more money. Right? We need funds so that way we can ensure that we can get affordable housing built, mixed income housing built, so people can not only have a place to live, but live near where they work.
It's not only Disney, like you said.
Yeah.
I've seen this all across the country. Real estate developers are essentially running city councils. They're giving money to Republicans, frankly, a lot of Democrats, and then you get these buzzwords like economic renewal,
Yeah.
urban redevelopment, yada, yada, yada. But, I mean, you're running for Congress. You said your rent went up 30%.
Yeah.
I've been reading stories about housing rent going up 50, 60%. Can you kind of talk about, frankly, even the Democratic Party here, they're taking a lot of money from the very people,
Yeah.
and they're basically giving the keys to
Yeah.
the land.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of like the status quo, right, of a lot of, not all, but a lot of municipal governments across the country, especially here in Florida. I think there's some great solutions. Obviously, I'm running for federal office. I think a lot of these solutions are closer to county government and local government. But what I can do is fight for money so we can bring bold programs to our city and give them money so we can do things like, I mean, we're talking about a community builders program where developers kind of, a lot of times a bad word, but we have an opportunity to train up developers who are from here, born here, who want to build up, mixed income housing so that way folks can actually live in the city that they work in. So I think there's some really cool niche opportunities for us to build people up and kind of change the status quo. But the first step, one of the first steps is electing people who aren't owned by these companies. And my campaign isn't taking any corporate PAC money, right? We're not taking that money. We're going to sit down with companies, right? We want to sit down with companies. Disney's one of the biggest employers in Central Florida, but that alone doesn't give them a pass, right? And so that's what we need to do. It's what we talk about all the time with corporations across the country. It's valuing profits over people. And in this case, we're talking about the people who live here, work here, are part of this city. And like I said, I mean, not step one, but one of the first steps is electing people who aren't bought and paid for by these corporations. The second step is ensuring that, and I want to be clear too, I love theme parks, right? You were saying you went to Disney. I'm an artist, I'm a drummer. I see the wonder in creating experiences for people, right? You go to Disney, you kind of out of your life. It's something that can inspire convictions of people that might change their life. And I love that, right? But we have to also dignify and celebrate the people who are making that vision come true, These are the people who are housekeepers in the hotels in Disney. These are people who are running the ticket booths, our ride operators, right? People who are making that vision come true for Disney are just as important, right? It's people at the top. Not a lot of politicians are talking that way right now and acting in that way, and so we need to do that. Part of that's passing the PRO Act, right, and ensuring that workers can unionize and organize within the workplace, and that there's not any serious repercussions due to that. There's some great representatives who are bringing this train of thought to their communities as people are starting to rise up, and we see things like whether it's the campaign of Bernie Sanders or March for Our Lives or the Dream Defenders, these movements of people, Black Lives Matter, rising up and demanding more. And I think little by little we're raising that bar. And unfortunately, that's kind of politics, right? But it's important. And I'll say this, it's not the end-all be-all. Voting isn't going to save us, right? There's a lot of other things we need to do within our community to take care of each other when the government isn't. So I always take a step back. I think there's a few solutions here, and we got to do them all at the same time. And politics isn't all of it, and it's going to take time because we're up against a system that was built on slavery, classism, right? We talk about this stuff all the time, and it's difficult, and especially when we put that onus on people who have been the victims of these systems and have been a part of them. So and I know some people listening might disagree with me, and that's those thoughts are valid, and I'm frustrated a lot of the time with government. That's why I'm running. But me being elected isn't going to get us Medicare for all, right? But it gets us a step closer. Mm-hmm. And that step closer, I think, is worth the fight.
And how do you tackle the money in politics issue? Because another issue going on here right now is essentially Florida had a program to give Floridians subsidies for solar, and essentially the monopoly in Florida Power and Light, has kind of rigged it in a way where there's a bill going through that would take away those subsidies for solar. Metering, so basically you have this corrupt system, which you'd be entering in Congress, where all these corporations, you're talking about solutions, but how do you tackle it if, I mean, there's Democrats who voted for that bill that would take away solar
One of
subsidies.
them is one of my opponents in this race right now, voted for that bill. That takes away incentives from people having the freedom to have their own power in their home, rooftop solar. Which I think we're in the sunshine state, right? We should be taking advantage of that. And you're right. I mean, money in politics it's one of these issues to end all issues, right? I don't think when we solve that, everything will automatically be fine. But I think it puts us in a situation where less of our politicians are being bought and paid for by corporations. Mm-hmm. But the problem is there's just a lot of switches that we have to turn off at the same time. Because if we solve money and politics problems and corporations having their hand in it, they're going to find other ways to be involved, right? And so that's where it gets to electing good progressive candidates all across the country. It's going to take time, but as we do that, I think we get to a place where when we're having these big discussions, we can talk less about how do we reduce harm and more of how do we get to the root cause of the problem.
Right.
And it's difficult to do that when the numbers are so low, to be quite frank. But we're getting there. So, I mean, money in politics is a big thing. That's why I don't take any corporate PAC money. We don't take any money from fossil fuel or anything like that. And, obviously it's part of my beliefs and who I am as a progressive, but also I want to live out and be an example to how I believe our politics should be. Mm-hmm. And for us, I mean, we have over, I think, 17,000 individual donors. Our average contribution was $29.25. So not as close as Bernie. We're not at 27, but we're getting there. And I think that's the way campaigns should be run.
And let me ask you, where, other than Texas, this is kind of ground zero for the culture war. We covered yesterday the Don't Say Gay bill, which is basically a solution for a made-up problem. There's also critical race theory bills going through to stop critical race theory from being taught, to stop white students from feeling uncomfortable. And to me, I certainly don't want to minimize, because LGBTQ people are being threatened, black and brown people are being threatened. We're heading over soon to interview LGBTQ high school students. But to me, what people are missing, because people have said to me, Jordan, why are you covering these culture war things? Because it literally is enabling the economic misery. These mass distraction campaigns, not just in Florida but elsewhere, against transgender people, LGBTQ people, black, brown people, immigrants, are helping to distract the masses from what's actually going on. The economic Hunger Games, the new Gilded Age. You can't afford rent, housing. 60 Minutes just did a piece about Florida, and now you have to rent the American dream because people can't buy a home. Can you kind of talk about what should people know about these culture wars campaigns that are going on here, and who are, what is the threat of them, not just to the groups being persecuted, but everybody else?
Well, what I'll say, they are distractions, but they're harmful distractions, right? They cause real pain for the people that they're going to affect, but also we got to think about these. These bills are targeting the way our education system works, the way that we challenge ourselves to be better and get rid of our implicit bias and move forward in a way. And we understand that people are oppressed here economically, but also by race and gender, and all of these different things make up what we call identity politics. And for me, I think about my journey and thinking about identity politics, and there was a point in my political life where I was like, I hate identity politics, because I think the way we think about it is this perverted version where it's like, oh, you're black, I'm gonna vote for you because you're black, right, or something like that. But what identity politics truly is, when we think about where it comes from, is it's just about how I see the world and how the world sees me, and because of every part of me, right? It can be down to wearing contacts or being in a wheelchair, the color of your skin, or where you were born, or how you talk. Do you have a stutter? All these little things are important. And I think a lot of times the progressive movement, I think a lot of times we talk bad about identity politics, and there is that perversion that corporate Dems or corporate, Republicans, they like to hone in on, especially corporate Democrats. But I think we should talk more about identity politics, but what it actually is. All these little parts that make up who we are, and how the world sees us and how we see the world. And I believe that's going to help us craft legislation that actually sees the world through the eyes of the most vulnerable. Because I believe in the best society, when we craft legislation like that helps the people who need the most help, we all stand to benefit. And that's why I'm for big universal programs like Medicare for All, right? Yeah, I'll end with this story. I have a friend named X. Their former name's Emma Gonzalez. The person said, we call BS March for Our Lives. And I remember the first time I met them, I went inside their room, and they had this thing where they were doing this a art project where they wrote on sticky notes every issue they could think of, every single thing, and made it in a circle. And then they took this string and they connected issues where they saw direct connection. And by the end of it, it's looks like one big circle, right? It's just a big web of crap, right? That's how we have to look at these issues. It's all so interconnected. Nothing is siloed, right? Medicare for All can help us solve gun violence because it's going to put people in a situation where they don't feel the need to solve their problems using guns, right? When we fight for things like a Green New Deal, when we're able to fix transit, their crime's going to come down, right? And people are going to be able to work where they live. And so either way, everything is connected is the message. And we need to elect people who understand that.
To me, it doesn't look like, it doesn't come off to working class voters that they are fighting as hard as the Republicans, even though the Republicans are fighting for these make-believe problems. You get in there, how do you fight? Do you play hardball with your vote? Tell people, what is your mentality? You got to work with the other side. You probably have to work with corporate Democrats. But how do progressives put up more of a fight to leverage their power?
Yeah, I mean, and to take a step back, I think Democrats in general need to stop coming to the debate at the compromise, right? And I think a lot of times we see ourselves as taking the high road, being the ones to do that, but it puts us in a situation where we're not getting anything near what we wanted in the first place. Think about things like Build Back Better, right? And the 3.5 number that the number was much higher before that, but the 3.5 number we all kind of rallied around the fact that it hasn't happened yet. So I think there needs to be a change in the type of politics we talk about. We should be more comfortable with putting pressure on people within our own party in an outward public way. And that's also beyond my politics. It's just, as an organizer, that's what I do, right? We put pressure on people publicly until they come to where we need them to be. And a lot of times that's just how it has to work. And so I think the Democratic Party could learn a bit more from organizers on how we can push people publicly and we can be respectful, but turn up the heat so we can get what we need.
Thanks for watching, and make sure to tune in to Status Coup's daily live stream Monday through Thursday at 5 o'clock Eastern Time and Fridays at 4 o'clock Eastern Time.